What's it like to be the son of one of the most famous athletes in the history of America? Today's guest will tell us in the life lessons he's learned. Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Doug Hudson.
I'm Scott Wood.
Welcome, the founder of Staubach Capital, Jeff Staubach. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here this morning.
Yeah. How you been? What's going on in your world?
Well, I've got 3 kiddos, so that's pretty busy. 2 in college, 1 at home that misses her other 2. So, and then I try and, go to work every day and pay for college tuition and figure out.
But no pain there, right? I sense no pain there.
No, it's amazing how inexpensive schools are these days.
Oh my gosh, it is unbelievable.
Tell us about the kiddos and your wife, boys, girls. What's their name? What are they up to?
Joe's a sophomore at TCU, Caroline's a freshman at Baylor, and Elizabeth's a sophomore at Ursuline.
Okay, all right.
Jenny and I met almost 26 years ago. Been married 22 years.
How'd y'all meet?
We met at a funeral.
You did?
Yes, of all places.
Whose funeral?
Her dad played football at Gettysburg College and then also played for the Colts and the Eagles, kind of bounced around the NFL a little bit. His wide receiver at Gettysburg College was my dad's wide receiver on his Navy base team. So this is a kind of a crazy concept because if it was happening now, no one would believe it. But he went from the Naval Academy, won the Heisman Trophy, goes into the Navy, and he's playing on a base football team.
This is your dad?
Yes. Yeah, this is
a base, almost intramural like today.
No, tackle football, they're all former athletes because back then the NFL wasn't quite what it is today. So, you could have been a really good player, but you might not choose the NFL because you got paid $25,000, right? It wasn't $25 million. So he's playing on the Pensacola Goshawks. His receiver's a guy named Tom McCracken, Mac, Uncle Mac, what my kids call him. And Tom's best friends from college were my in-laws, and his best friends from the Navy were my parents. They had babies together in Pensacola. Tom moved to Dallas, flew for Delta forever, is a Silver Star, total just stud, flew low and slow in Vietnam, took all kinds of risks. And his wife passed away unexpectedly in 1998, and there were 3 eulogies. One of them was from our family, one of them was from the Ward family, Jenny Ward, and one of them was from a Delta family, his Delta pilot buddy. And so I gave the eulogy from our family, and we met afterwards. And I wasn't hitting on, chasing women at the funeral, but we met, and
there's wedding crashers, and then there was funeral crashers, and so that's what you were.
And so I'll never forget it. I met him. I was like, wow, there's 3 Ward girls, and they're all beautiful. And I thought, man, Mac, how come you never introduced me to these girls that lived in Plano?
For good reason.
That lived in Plano. So that's how we met. Yeah.
So they lived here.
Yeah, they were in Plano, but as you guys know, when 35 years ago, right? You had there's no, you weren't on Instagram seeing somebody that goes to Plano West or wherever.
All right, so I got to ask about the base football
100%
team.
Yeah.
Was it everybody padded up?
Yeah, it was real football. So they played against the colleges.
Yeah, okay.
And so there's a semi-famous story. So Ed O'Neill, right, from Modern Family. He played for Youngstown State, I believe. Okay. And he played against that team. If you go online and type in Ed O'Neill, what's the ESPN guy? I can see his face. He does all the coverage for the combine now. But he tells the story of playing against him.
Okay.
And he thought they were just going to thump this Navy team.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the backup quarterback was like a Division I quarterback.
Yeah.
So he shows up thinking, he's going to be the quarterback. And it's like, well, no, we got this other guy that's pretty good.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. And so, so they played real football.
How is there not a documentary on the Pensacola
I don't think there's much footage.
Hawk?
I think it's GOS Hawks. HA. Yeah. I mean, if there's a little bit, but like I said, if it was happening today,
correct.
You know, if Caleb Williams had to go serve in the military or what, you know, whatever.
The footage and the documentation.
Yeah, they wouldn't allow it. I mean,
correct,
he's out there playing, but he wasn't sure he was going to play. He had a deal with the Cowboys that if he decided not to play after his 4-year commitment, then they would stop paying him, but he didn't have to go play.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so that was part of his commitment to the Navy was, and part of the commitment to the Cowboys was, hey, I don't know if I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Because again, it was like $25,000.
Right.
And I think that was his first year. And so they paid him like $1,000 a month just while he was in the Navy. Between his 3rd and 4th year, I think after he went to Vietnam, this is one of these lessons that we talked about.
Good.
Is instead of taking R&R, he went to camp. And so he had 2 weeks off from the Navy, and kind of give credit to my mom because they had 2 at the time, 2 babies. He went to camp instead of taking time off. And the big thing that happened there was he realized he could play at that level.
Yeah.
And Coach Landry gave him the playbook.
No way.
And so when people told him years later, they said, when he gave you the playbook, then like that was the real deal because he gave no one the playbook.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's the principle your all's family gleans from that? What's the lesson in there for you all?
He had an opportunity to get out of his commitment from the Navy. And 25 years ago, maybe, I was on a father-son hunting trip, and it was a bunch of very successful dads and a bunch of kids that, knucklehead kids.
Yep.
And he's telling the story, and some of the dads were asking him, hold on a second, wait a minute. I knew you weren't in the Navy, but you graduated, and then you, at 23, because he went to prep school for a year. He went to a New Mexico Military Institute, played football there, then went to the Navy. So he graduated at 23. So then he got out of the Navy when he was 27. And Dak's 30 now, right?
Right.
Yep. And so he had an opportunity. The Navy, you can get out after a certain amount of time. They'll let you out of your commitment. I think it's like after your sophomore year or something. Totally no questions asked. Hey, if this isn't a fit for you, and people do it, and it's perfectly fine. When he got drafted, he had an opportunity to do that. This young man was sitting next to me, and he looked at him and he goes, "What? Why?
I couldn't even imagine.
What were you thinking? Like, why didn't you do that?"
Yeah.
And he looked him straight in the eye. He goes, "Because I made a commitment to the Navy." And that was like, it didn't matter legally or even ethically, what he could or couldn't do.
His word was,
he was, "Hey, I told you, you made a commitment to me, right? You offered me this education. You told me it was going to be 4 years after that, and that's what I agreed to. Doesn't matter how.
That's what I signed up for.
If, by the way, if I broke my leg playing football or got injured, then I wouldn't have. You would have let me out of my service or whatever. And so the commitment again for that and going to camp that year is kind of what I learned as a kid. And one of the specific lessons I've told is when I was about 12, I was playing baseball. And we had a Saturday morning practice, and I didn't want to go, and so I just figured I'd skip it, right? Like, and no one's really going to know, right?
Yeah.
There's no cell phones and group me's, and so somehow my dad found out. I don't know how. I still to this day, and he doesn't even remember how he found out that I was sitting there watching cartoons and practice was going on down the street, and so he grabbed me and said, "Hey, what do you like? You got practice?" I'm like, "I don't feel like it." And he gets me in the car and he takes me there and he says, "I don't care what you do, whether it's baseball or you want to play an instrument or it doesn't matter what it is, but if you make a commitment to it, you're going to do it 100%." And he went up and he apologized to the coach actually and told him it was Tommy Klein. I mean, Clayton, Tommy's son is my daughter's godfather. I mean, that's how, like, I remember like it was yesterday. And so it didn't matter what it was. If you want to do it, you just, go full throttle.
Your yes is your yes.
Right.
Yep. You commit.
His lesson from that, his dad, when he was in about the same age, coincidentally, he was, as you can imagine, a pretty decent athlete as a kid. Shortstop, center fielder, hit, for, the pitcher, the whole, you knew these, we all know these kids when you're growing up. The coach told him, you need to play catcher because you're like the only one who can catch it every time and aren't afraid of the bat swinging. And back then it was probably like, barely a helmet and
exactly.
Wasn't quite
face mask.
You maybe. And he's like, I don't catch, I play shortstop and coach is kind of like, well, Roger, we need you back there. And his dad told him, he said, not only are you going to be a catcher, you're going to be the best catcher you can be. That's just a tiny little piece of the story. And I hadn't heard this story until about 10 years ago. But if you fast forward 5 years later, he's going into his senior year in high school and his coach comes up to him and says, I want you to play quarterback. And he said, no, I don't, I'm a receiver and, I play safety, and you play both ways, obviously back then. And, he thought back to that lesson from his dad. And so he said, well, if you think I'm going to be the best quarterback, that's what I'm going to do. So he didn't play quarterback till his senior year in high school.
How old were you when you did the eulogy?
23.
What
23.
an honor. Jeff.
Well, it was.
Was your whole family? Was your dad there with you?
Yeah,
they spoke.
They were asked. So the way it worked is they were, my dad or my mom was asked to do it, and they couldn't do it. It was she was so
Too
young.
emotional.
It was a best friend, and so my brother-in-law was actually going to do it because I was really close with the boys. Still am close with Tommy and Matt and Mac. I said no. It needs to be from someone in the family. So I did it, and Jenny's family actually they read it. The minister read it, like they couldn't.
Yeah. So you meet Jenny. When do you ask her out?
Shoot, again. I mean, it's just a different time. We
Was the funeral in?
It was
Dallas?
in Dallas.
Okay.
Yeah. So we, I bumped into her a few weeks later. Our first date was October 15th. Hope I get that right. 1998. The funeral was like September 20th.
Okay.
I bumped into her at a Texas OU party at one of the boys who lost their mom at his house. Just a few weeks later, we're hanging out, and that's when I got her number. I don't know how. I don't even know how it worked back then.
Yeah.
You had that long phone cord. Well, actually, 98. Maybe you had a Motorola brick. Yeah, you might have had the brick phone. Or
no, I mean, I remember like we've told our kids the story. It's just so different now. As I called her apartment. Her sister answered, and hello, this is Jeff. Can I talk to Jenny? And she like covers the mic. She's like, Jeff, why is he calling? And then I was like, hey, I'd like to. Again, I don't even know how it worked. I want to take you out to dinner or what? I want to pick you up at 7. You weren't texting, hey, I'm outside, or I'm on my way. It was like you said you're going to be there, and
very different.
So we every now and then we go on our first date anniversary. We haven't done it in a few years, which I feel bad, but we go to the Mikasina that we went to at Frankfurt in the tollway.
No way.
So it's still there. Yeah, that's
awesome.
That's where our first date was.
Alicia and I do that too. We kind of relive our first date from time to time. Not every year.
Where was that?
Well, we went to the museum to a little black tie thing.
Yes.
But Central Expressway was under construction.
Yeah, forever.
And so we took Greenville. She lived at like Greenville and 635.
Yeah.
And so we took Greenville all the way downtown. And at the corner of Park Lane and Greenville Avenue, where the Taco Cabana is, it's still there.
100%.
It was there 30 years ago. And at that intersection, we're having this conversation, and that was when the light bulbs kind of went off for both of us. We compared notes, much months later, but we were having a conversation, and I was like,
"Wait a minute,
this
you
girl's
and
really."
Alicia's first date was you. It included a Taco Cabana.
Yes. Yeah.
Come on, I don't believe
we didn't
that.
go to it, but we drove by it. So we'll drive by Greenville, and we'll go by the Taco Cabana, and then go downtown, and then we'll go to the church where we got married, and just kind of make the tour. So
I think
that's
it may
a good
have
thing to
actually
do.
just gone out. Maybe
Really?
Yeah, we had to go check.
Oh
that.
man, we might have to go more than that.
My wife lived at the apartments at Frankfurt in the Tollway.
Oh yeah.
the Palisades, I think is what it was called. So
that was way north.
That was way north Dallas.
Yeah.
That was
that was the joke that she was a 972. I live north of LBJ, so technically I'm a 972 kid as well, but just barely north of LBJ.
Yeah, I heard about some epic basketball games off of Hillcrest.
Oh man, those games.
Is basketball still happening in the family?
It's funny. So McCracken, Mac, our connection to Jenny, or my connection to Jenny, he used to play there every Saturday. We played every Saturday. They played, and then usually Tuesdays and Thursdays at like 6 p.m. they'd get a game. And so my dad had this miniature full court. We played for years, and I was telling, like, I literally not that long ago, I was talking to my dad about this, how those guys played at my age, right? So they were like 50 and they were still out there running and gun. I don't even dream of like going full throttle on a basketball court.
I hope your dad looked at you like he would all three and says, "You guys are soft. You guys,
we must be." But I don't. No one tore their Achilles 25 years ago. I don't know what has happened in the last 25 years, but like now, all these guys our age, my doctor is a couple years older than me, and he tore his Achilles playing pickleball, and I'm like, I can't afford an Achilles tear. Like it's gonna be, if it's my right foot and I can't drive, there might be a divorce. I mean, like if Jenny had to drive me everywhere.
It's funny that you bring the basketball up, because we lived at Hillcrest and Campbell, basically, and so we were up and down Hillcrest all the time.
Two lanes.
And I remember when my dad was a home builder, and so somehow he knew where y'all's house.
Everybody knew where their house was on Hillcrest.
Yeah, and so I can remember driving by there. I remember seeing the basketball court and thinking, oh, there's the Staubach's house over there.
And not to name drop, but I played against Michael Jordan on that court.
Wow. Come on.
Yeah.
Was it 4-on-4 typically, 3-on-3?
It was usually 3-on-3. 4-on-4 was a little tight. President Bush has played on that court. When during the 1984 Republican convention, he and his brothers came over and played because they had heard about this court.
Yeah.
But my dad met Jordan before he was, the greatest of all time, right? He was a very good player, but hadn't won any championships, and he was my favorite player.
Yeah.
Like now going to Duke, now he's not my favorite player anymore. Grant Hill's my favorite player. Back then, he was my favorite player, and so there was a long before podcast, there was a show on some network where current legends or future legends interviewed legends.
Okay.
And so he was interviewing my dad at it was at La Costa in Carlsbad.
Yeah.
And my dad knew how much I loved him, so he took me with him. So I got to hang out with him, and he was
How old were you at that time?
7th grade.
Okay. Wow.
And so I remember, coming back from, took me out of class and coming back and, telling my friends, but again, we didn't have cell phone,
Yeah, exactly.
There was no photo. There was a photo of it, but not, it was like, it was at the, Fox photo getting developed, or Eckerd's. And so they make a connection, and he says, hey, let's get together when I'm in town. And so they played once a year here, the Bulls did. And after the game, he came over. We picked him up at the Hyatt Regency. My buddy, my best friend, still to this day, one of my best friends in the world. We're sitting in the back seat, and Michael Jordan gets in the front seat of the car. We take him to my parents' house on Edelweiss and have dinner with some people. Late. It's a late dinner, and my dad decides to show him the basketball court, and so we go out there and we played a little 2-on-1. So my buddy there's we have photos of him, like bringing the ball up the court.
Awesome.
But there was legendary. Barkley had been there. There used to be an event that Spud Webb had here for the boys club.
Yeah.
And they would host a game of horse at my dad's house, and if you'd pay X amount of dollars to compete against Barkley, Moses Malone, Chris Mullen, Magic. All kinds of
super
guys.
Fun.
Yeah, during the All-Star. I think it was during All-Star weekend.
All right, so
but there's been a lot of injuries, that court, yeah. There was a
Did
famous
anybody have to sign a waiver?
Yeah,
you know what? It's like it's funny. Like those didn't exist, right? You just showed up, and if you got hurt, you got hurt. But there was somebody put a sign up on the fence, and there were 2 rules, and it said Roger can shoot from 30 feet. It's his court, And then the second rule was no autopsy, no foul. And there's also trees on the court. Did you ever see the court?
No, I got close to being invited, and I did not ever get invited. And so
there were trees on the court.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, you could go, like, there were 2 trees that were
literally on the playing surface.
On the playing surface.
You had to dribble around them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, not like in the middle. They were towards the edge.
Yeah.
But I guess
just
my mom,
you could like body check somebody into.
you could use it as a pick. I mean, it was
that's phenomenal.
I mean, people would show up and they'd be like, "There's 2 trees."
trees on the court.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I guess my mom said,
advantage.
my mom said, you can't cut down the trees
for
for your basketball court.
Yeah.
We know who ran the house.
Yeah.
We know who ran the house. Roger may run the team, but we know she ran the house.
That's great.
So you graduate high school, and where do you go to college?
I went to Duke.
You went to Duke. Okay.
This is my time. This is my time of year.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're on against.
Are you bullish?
Vermont. I'm such an idiot in my bracket. I pick them, to go farther than they go. I have them in the Final Four this year,
of course,
and I can't help myself. I keep clicking it, and
so you have them winning the whole tournament.
I do have them winning the whole thing.
You should,
and I shouldn't, because the one year I didn't pick them to win is when they won it. One of the years that they won it. So yeah, I went there.
Why'd you choose Duke?
To play baseball.
Okay. Yep.
Again, one of those decisions we had talked about is I really wanted to go to Georgetown, and my sister was in law school at Catholic University in D.C., and she had lived there. She went undergrad there, worked in the White House, and then she was in law school there. And so I went up there and I visited, and I'm like, this is gonna be great. We'll be flying home together. It'll kind of make the travel and homesickness a little easier.
Yeah.
And so the coach, he was the only coach really actively recruiting me.
Duke's coach?
No, Georgetown.
Georgetown.
The Duke coach talked to me and they weren't offering any money.
Yeah.
But that's how baseball works with lots of walk-ons.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Different than football and basketball. Larry Gerasciati was his name. Old school guy, my type of coach. He'd call me almost every Saturday morning. Sometimes my mom would wake me up. Hey, coach, Georgetown coach is on the phone. And so I go up to visit, and I'm all excited. I get to the field. I'm sitting there in the stands, and the game, they have a bad game, a couple errors, like they just have a bad game. And when he's coming off the field, I introduce myself again, right? He doesn't know what I look like. And so I said, hey, coach, Jeff Staubach, and he kind of blows me off. At that time, I thought he blew me off because we were going to meet the next day. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, all right. And he just kind of walked off. And I went back to my sister's apartment and I said, I'm going to Duke. And I canceled the meeting the next day. It was the right decision at the time, but it was not really the best decision. But if they would have won that game, I might have ended up at Georgetown, because if they would have won the game,
he'd been in a good mood.
He would have grabbed me, taken me into the locker room, introduced me to all the guys, and said, "Jeff's coming here next year." Whatever, who knows what would have happened? Right. But that one, and thankfully, because I'm happy. I mean, it was the right decision for me, and we played against them too when I was there. But that was the main obviously the school, the Hills are very close friends of ours. Janet, who passed away not too long ago, Grant's mom and my mom, and Calvin and my dad were the best of friends. And so Grant being there was also a big draw. Janet pretty much told me that, like, this is where you're going.
Yeah. Did that coach ever give you a hard time when he'd see you when you all played each other?
We never
never really reconnected.
Yeah, we didn't really reconnect. Yeah. It'd be a good story for him.
Yeah.
To know, because it could have been so different. Who knows? Would I have been any good there? Who knows what would have happened? But
it is interesting how those decision points that we make and how we come to them and how they take us on different forks in the road. So you finish school. And then what's next after that?
I was a bullpen catcher. I'll make sure to be very clear. I was about to go to work in the summer of '97, and the major league draft was happening, and I wasn't going to get drafted. I knew that wasn't, even though there's 89 rounds at the time or back then.
So you played catcher all through.
I was a backup catcher, and I played left field, DH. and most of my bats were DH, but I played left field my senior year, and I lost like 40 pounds between my sophomore and junior. So I went from like not, being very fast to like, okay, he can play in the outfield.
Yeah.
A guy calls me up and he says, hey, the Padres and the Royals might need a guy in their short season A-ball. They don't think they're going to sign their left fielder, their utility guy, whatever. And I was like, I'm in, man. Like no question. And Tom House, do you remember that name?
Yeah,
Tom House.
Sure.
So House was doing some consulting with the Padres. He calls me, and I get I was so excited. I drove straight to Jesuit, got in the batting cage because I hadn't hit in like 2 weeks, hadn't thrown. I was done with baseball. I was like, man, and then it didn't happen. So they signed their guys, nothing happens. 4th of July weekend, we're down at my parents' place in Horseshoe Bay. Somehow, again, no idea how they track me down, how they get the phone number.
Yeah.
And this guy calls me up and says, the Yankees want to give you a workout or a tryout. I don't even know what it was, to be honest. And I drove home, got on an airplane, went to Tampa, and really caught a lot of bullpens. I got a few at bats here and there, but they liked me because I behaved, had a college degree. What was really interesting is 2 of my mentors are major league managers now. And one of them, they wanted me to follow in his footsteps. When I decided to quit, a guy named Derek Shelton, who's the Pirates manager. Derek's awesome. And he was a backup catcher, a decent athlete, spoke enough Spanish to communicate with the guys, and but knew the game. And so there was a guy named Trey Hillman. Trey's a UTA guy, and after my games in the mornings, they would make me sit with Trey. He was the AA manager. And I was like, why are they making me do this? And I'd catch a bullpen maybe, but he would just ask me questions all game.
Yeah.
And they were figuring out if I knew the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so they saw a potential path for you in managing in baseball. Interesting.
So I had a long conversation with my dad about it because they had said, hey, we don't know what your playing time. I went and met with the head of minor league development after my first full season. So it was a short season, then I'm in a full season, and they moved me to Greensboro. They moved me back down. I got deactivated in Greensboro because they brought a guy in, and so then I couldn't even play. Now I can't even play. I'm not even on the roster,
right.
And so I'm getting frustrated, and buses are terrible, and
it's not a glamorous life.
No, it's not. And it's very much like Bull Durham, or it was then. Now I'm sure it's obviously
better,
technology, right?
Yeah.
You're on your iPad and phones. It's a little different. And so I went and met with a guy named Mark Newman, and I said, Mark, what do you want? What do you want me to do? And he goes, he's like, we're never going to cut you. He goes, you do everything you're asked to do. You catch. I got to catch Hideki Arabu. I got to catch El Duque. I caught all kinds of guys. All the rehab guys worked out with Darryl Strawberry.
Yeah.
Unbelievable experience.
Yeah.
And we're thinking about becoming a player coach, and then get into coaching. And I thought, man, this is my dream.
Yeah.
And the reason I decided to come home was I thought to myself, I could do this for 20 years and not become a manager, a big league manager.
Yep.
If you had told me, hey, Jeff, when you're 40, you're going to be a big league manager, just like in any business, right? Hey, if you show up at wherever, True North, or you show up at JLL or wherever, if you work your butt off and perform, you're going to move up and you're going to make money, right? No, and there was no guarantee of that. And a great example is the Yankees, for example. It's Girardi became the manager right out of being a catcher, right? And so Derek and Rob Thompson,
whoever else was in that line.
Well, the 2 guys who are now, they're one's at the Phillies, one's at the Pirates, right? They're big league managers, but they're still it's a very tough road, and the life is really tough because you could be in single A and then you go to double A, and where do you live, right? Is your family in Tampa, where the Yankees are based, or are they in Columbus, where the AAA team is? It's a very, very tough life.
Yep.
Clearly, key decision point there in terms of trajectory of life and career and profession and where you're going to go. So
we were driving back. My son, we've had some decision point discussions just recently. Saturday we did. He said, "Why did you when did you know like to you were done playing baseball?" And I said, "We were driving back from playing."
You and Jenny? Are you married at this point?
Oh no. I hadn't met.
Okay.
By the way, if I would have stuck with baseball, we never would have met.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been in Dallas.
Well said.
For that funeral.
Yeah.
And we were driving back from playing the Piedmont Boll Weevils.
Minor league names with the
minor league names.
I love your the recall on the detail.
Oh, 100%.
I'm like, we're going to come back to that, but like, I love the detail.
So the Piedmont Boll Weevils, and I'm sitting next to Dennis Twombly. Twombs was the other catcher. There were 3 catchers on the team. He was like he played, and he would play on Sundays or double headers, whatever. And Twombs and I are sitting there, and we're both like 215 pounds, jammed into these seats. And I looked over at him and I said, "Twombs, I'm done." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I go, "I'm out. I'm done. I can't do it anymore." And he goes, no. And so I get home, I call my dad, and I said, I think I'm ready to hang it up. And he didn't, he supported any decision. And so then literally so I said, I got to sleep on it. Like, let me show up at the facility tomorrow and kind of see. And I walked into the facility and sat down with Chief Tom Nieto, the manager, and he was Native American, so called him Chief. Probably can't do that anymore.
And where is this meeting happening?
Greensboro.
This is Greensboro,
North Carolina. The Greensboro Bats. They used to be the Hornets, but it's like where Jeter came up through there. Okay. All these guys, right before me. So I just said, I'm done, and got in the car and drove home.
How many years was that in total?
18 months, really, or not even. It was a short season and then a full season.
So when you quit and you said, "I'm done," did you know what you were moving to? Or
no,
you just
I wasn't sure yet.
Okay, I'm going to go figure it out.
I mean, I was going to go work for my dad's company the summer before.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Chief told me, he's like, "You're going to regret this." The manager. Yeah. He said, because he had actually left baseball and gone into a family business, and then came back to baseball. Mm-hmm. And I was like, nah, I don't think, and there was a very small period of time where I wish I gave it one more year. And then one of my best friends on that team was a guy named Scott Siebel, and Scott went to West Virginia and was like an 88th round pick. He made it to the big leagues. And when he made it to the big leagues, I thought, man, maybe I could have, but he was a better player than me. So I didn't think I could get there. But that was the only time where I thought, man, if I stuck it out. But the people who stick it out typically don't have a backup plan.
Yeah.
They didn't finish college, most of the guys. And so, their life is making $1,000 a month and $1,200, then $1,400. You make a AA, AAA, you start making,
and waiting on the call.
And so when Scott made it, I thought to myself, man, like he made it. And he at the time he was the lowest draft pick or highest, however you look at it, to make it to the big leagues.
Interesting.
Okay, so you come back to Dallas.
Yep.
And what's that process look like?
So there was a guy named Joe Owen, and Joe was my first boss. The Staubach company created a kind of a principal owned, almost like an affiliate company. I don't know what the structure was. I was just a kid, and I had interned for him the summer before, and so he brought me on as an analyst. Paid $37.5. I remember, I think the offer the summer before was $35, and so $37.5. I'm like, wow, man, I got an extra $2,500.
I mean, you showed up yet.
That's a funny story about taxes. One of the guys I played with, a guy named Ryan Bradley from Arizona State, faced him in college, and then played with him in Tampa. He got a $500,000 signing bonus, and he made it to the big leagues. And we're sitting in the training room one day. We're icing our arms, doing whatever. Guys are getting worked on. And he goes, do you know how much the government takes? and I look over and I'm like, yeah, I didn't know if it was 37%, 30. I mean, at the time,
whatever, it was a big number.
I knew it was a lot. I knew they took a lot of it. And he was absolutely shocked that he didn't get a briefcase of $500,000. That he got a briefcase of 500,000 times 0.6 or whatever, whatever. 300. He could not believe it. And everyone in there except for me and like one other guy and the trainers, the guys who were getting, they were like, yeah, that's how it works.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Welcome,
he had no idea.
Welcome to life.
So I went to work for Joe.
What was the name of that group?
It was called NLP, Net Lease Properties. And so we were trying to we had partnered with a group out of New York. I learned the side of the business that I'm actually in now, the principal side of it. I did that for a few years, and then I moved into the tenant rep side of the Staubach company, which was kind of the bread and butter of the business, and did that till 2018. So almost 20 years. It's kind of weird. It's almost 10 years of Staubach company and 10 years of JLL, and then left.
What happened there?
JLL. So the Staubach company was a unique structure in that the offices, there were 68 offices, I believe, at the time in 2007. And they were set up as individually owned, licensed offices. CBRE and Cushman and the our competitors would call it a franchise.
Yep.
So they would say, Scott, don't hire JLL, don't hire Staubach because the guy in Denver doesn't even really work for Roger. He's owned. It's a franchise. It's a franchise model.
Right.
And it kind of was, but it really wasn't. It was a much more structured business than that. But there was nothing to really buy.
Yeah.
And so in 2007, my sister came on in like 2006 as GC. She was a corporate attorney, and she came on, and they rolled up the company. So it became one in the summer of 2007. Now, Dan Bello in Houston, for example, Dan owned a percentage of the whole thing, not the percentage of Houston.
Yeah.
And then just by coincidence, JLL wanted to grow in the U.S. because they were more of an international company. They didn't really do what we did. They were property management and a lot of project leasing, not the tenant side of the business. And so now there was something that they could buy. Mm-hmm. And and it wasn't done that way. It wasn't rolled up to sell. It wasn't rolled up to go public or do anything like that. It was just rolled up to make it a better, stronger business.
Yeah, interesting. Jeff, essentially 67 or 68 franchisees, but not. Do you recall, obviously, what's your sister's name?
Stephanie.
Were those conversations super difficult? What do you remember? That seems that's like herding cats.
We were talking about this on Sunday, coincidentally, because we were all together. And my brother-in-law, John Gates, who still works JLL, runs a big business there. John was, I forgot what his title was at the time, but he was involved. And JLL. It's funny, JLL didn't know Stephanie Phillips was Stephanie Staubach at one time.
Oh, they didn't.
They didn't know John Gates was, my brother-in-law, and they didn't even know that I worked there. Like and all of a sudden everything, they were like, wait a minute, who are all these people? But yeah, so it would be interesting. I don't know what was a tougher process, the roll-up or the actual sale. Just from, I'm sure the legal bills, you could probably know what the legal bills were and know what was more. But it was complicated because you're putting a value on someone's business, right? And you're looking at like 3 years or how far do you go back? And if you're a younger office and you're like, wait a minute, we just opened the office and wherever, and our value should be this, and so it was. I think only one office didn't roll up at that time, but then rolled in kind of at a later date.
Incredible exercise to roll up 68 some odd offices
100%.
all at once
with like hundreds of shareholders.
Yeah.
So, if you Google, my son, he sent it to me because one of his friends sent it to him, that there's on the internet the most successful financial athlete ever, or one of the most successful financial athletes ever, is my dad. Allegedly. It's not accurate, by the way. But because they sold the company for $750 million.
Right.
And so people think that like he got $750 million.
Right.
Yeah.
The government would have taken some of that also. Right. But people don't.
But you had 100.
But there was like 385 shareholders.
Yeah.
I mean, in this, and that was, you know, across the country and all those offices. So Houston might have had 9 shareholders, right? Staubach Dallas, the holdco, had, you know, however many shareholders, right? Charlotte had 10 shareholders in their business. And so it was, you know, it was a much bigger pot, or, you know, much more people than people think were involved.
So you were there 20-ish years?
Almost 20 years,
Almost 20 years from kind of start to finish. And then what was the catalyst for making the change to go out on your own?
I took over the region, which didn't require a ton of travel, you know, it was the Central Texas, it was Dallas, Fort Worth, and Kansas City, it's odd, but Kansas City is under the DFW kind of market. And I loved it, loved all the people, still working on transactions. I didn't want to get out of the transaction business. And after the first year of doing that, my brother-in-law grabbed me and he said, "Hey, how'd it go? Like, how are your expectations? Did it work the way you thought?" I said, "Yeah, it's great." I said, "But I never want to get promoted. Like, I'm done. I don't want to move up." And he's like, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to get into the travel business, where I just don't want to be on the road." And the global CEO at the time, and not that I had aspirations or the potential to be global CEO, but when he was in town, I was like his, you know, driver, butler, you know, like, you know, taking him to meetings and lunches, and, you know, spent 2 full days with him, and he was great. And we were just talking, and I said, "How often are you on the road?" He said, 200 days.
Goodness gracious.
And I said, "Christian, you eat 600 meals a year on the road?" And he kind of, you know, he didn't think
you reframed it for him.
And he goes, yeah. And I thought, there is no, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much he'd have to pay me to do that. And he had, you know, his kids were a little older than mine, but he still had some younger kids. And so to be gone, and it's international, right? So, I mean, you know how it is when you travel for pleasure and you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're trying to get home, and they lose your bags, or, I mean, yeah. So my next level up was going to be a lot more travel domestically, like John, my brother-in-law, and I didn't want to be gone. My dad made a lot of effort when he was traveling to get back for things. And, you know, I tell people, I saw a guy the other day, I was flying back from Durham, and seated next to me on the plane was a guy named Rob Landon. And Rob's son is a Duke lacrosse player. And so he had flown up there for the game, and he was flying back. And we start talking, and I texted him later that day, and I said, "By the way," I said, "you don't know how much that means for your son." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "My dad came to 20, 25, 30 games a year. And I said, I didn't appreciate it as much at the time, but when you become a parent, you realize the effort, right, that it takes
to get there,
to get on a plane, to leave work early, or in my case, my dad, typically Durham was a stop either at the end of a trip or at the beginning of a trip. So he'd fly to Durham on Friday, watch us play Carolina Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then he'd go to New York, right? And at the time, I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, this is great.
It's easy for him.
Yeah, this is easy. It's staying in a nice hotel. We're having fun. He's hanging out with his kid. But I'm not, now I think through, okay, you're packing a suit, you're packing then you're packing your casual, you're packing for 6 days and not 3 days. And
you're not seeing you're getting home to your wife and to your home. Yeah, it's enjoyable sacrifices, but they are sacrifices.
Right.
They are investments.
Well, I told a story. There were a lot of games that he came to that I didn't play.
Yeah.
A lot. And my freshman year, I got 13 at bats. And so, 55 games, you do the math. And I remember thinking to myself, golly, that's a lot of effort. And it hit me years later that he didn't come to see me play. He just came to see me.
Yeah,
100%.
And I've got a daughter who's my son walked on the football team at TCU, and don't know if and when he's going to play, but we go to all the games. And it's easy though; it's in Fort Worth, so I'm not like getting on airplanes. But our daughter's at Baylor playing soccer, and she redshirted last year, and they've got a kind of a spring season coming up. She's like, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to play in this game. Or I don't know if I'm going to play in that game." And I kind of think back to, well, that's, I'd love to see you play.
Yeah.
But I like to see you.
Want to see.
Yeah. It's awesome. So go back to
to the process.
So the
leaving
long
JLL to start your own thing.
So in the middle of that second year in the leadership role, I started thinking, I was like researching entrepreneurs, and it's kind of interesting. People start businesses when they have nothing to lose or when they have something to lose. And it's like 23 and 43. It's not those exact numbers, but I was 43 at the time, I guess. Yeah, I was 42 or 43.
Interesting.
And where you can, okay, if I don't make any money for a couple years, it's all right. Like I'm not going to miss house payments. And so I started Robert Shaw, who's been a mentor and a friend, multifamily developer. I went and sat down with him. I used to work out with him a couple days a week, and so I sat down with him and said, I'm thinking about, leaving, and I don't know what it means. And he said to me, he goes, you can come down here right now. Like, I'll give you an office or a cube, and you don't need a business plan. I'll give you a salary, and you can go do anything except for multifamily development, which I wouldn't do that. And so I thought, man, what an opportunity,
What an offer.
right?
Yeah.
And he said, before you do that, though, go talk to Mark and Scott. And Mark Goldman and Scott Wilson used to run a kind of a principal arm of the Staubach Company before JLL bought, and they spun out. And so I went and talked to them. We ended up partnering together, and then they spun out a few years later. But the main decision was that I wanted to try and, do something different from the brokerage world, and it wasn't that I saw the brokerage world changing. I mean, it's still going to be a vibrant business, but I wanted to try and own real estate. And so that was the idea. And 6 years in now, it's hard to believe, COVID and everything that happened. I mean, it was kind of crazy.
So when you partnered with Scott and Mark, they were still running this principal group connected to JLL
loosely. They were loosely connected. When JLL bought, there were some affiliate companies of Staubach that JLL didn't buy because there was no reason to.
Right.
And so
wasn't part of the core business.
Yeah. Columbus, Robert Shaw's multifamily development was kind of an affiliate.
Yeah.
Office in the building was under a sublease with Staubach and had been under JLL. And so Mark and Scott were kind of a similar deal.
So would you say it was a bit of a easy jump to Mark and Scott, because it wasn't like you were having to go set up your own shingle and your own LLC.
That was the reason to have partners. Is kind of a soft landing. Same building. Same parking spot, right? And, which I'm not saying that's always the right thing, the easy route. But it ended up being the right decision, because I figured, hey, I can go in, we can get started. My assistant can come with me and get payroll and everything, and
all that kind of stuff was sort of taken care of. You
easy,
could focus
right?
on
I'm not worried about getting office space or sitting with somebody. So that was the driver, but also having partners with experience on the principal side as well.
And then you were with them
2 years. Yeah. So we had 2 years together. They had some assets from their previous life that were going to be
healthcare related, primarily.
Healthcare. And they were going to exit some of these assets. They ended up not, so they didn't spend as much time, and things changed. I was funding more in the business, and all these way more complicated than you guys want to hear about. But at the end of 19, they spun out They spun out of Staubach Capital. Yeah. We still office together. Yeah. We did. We don't now, but we've outgrown, and they've moved out. But we were officing together. Nothing changed other than they were only partners in the existing deals we had. And then March of 2020, and then I'm like, oh my! I mean, now what am I going to do? It just, because our business takes a long time to get going and have exits, and when COVID hit, it was like, okay, is this it? Like, am I done? Right?
Yeah.
Signed a 5-year lease, right. In October because we're coming up on our 5-year lease. I thought, man, this is, what's going to happen to our world.
What are you learning through March of 20, and what you're 6 years into owning your own organization? What are some of the good, bad, and ugly?
So I didn't know. I mean, like most people, I didn't know what I was doing during COVID. One of your guests here, Tyler Cooper, Tyler and I were in YPO Forum together. And so we were still getting together. We would sit outside at someone's backyard, but we were with each other a lot. And I joked in one of those meetings, I said, I used to be jealous of you guys, meaning Chris Carter, the managing partner at Natural Gas Partners, Tyler Cooper, the head of this monster organization, Brian King, with a massive amount of AUM at Luther King Capital, and Chris Zagaro. I mean, these guys with these big businesses, and I said, I've got two people. I said, now I'm not jealous of you. Got Blake Rolling, right, with Omni, right? I mean, these guys, like, they had big problems, right, that they were dealing with. And I was kind of like, well, we're just going to stay home for a little while. But I didn't know what the plan was. And fortunately, we closed for we were in construction, so technically we were essential business, so we didn't have to close. And you guys probably know that no buildings were closing, because if they close, then rent gets disrupted and everything. So you could still go to the office and work. And I'm trying to homeschool at the same time and manage 3 kids and all this. Just, when are they going back? And it was that spring break, right? Like, we're literally right now when, hey, they're not going back. They might not go back after spring break. Oh, they might not go back in April. They might not go back at all, right? And so I went back to the office, and I'd be in there by myself, just trying to work. And I just started calling. I mean, I called everyone I knew in the business, probably called you. I don't know. I mean, I was just calling people and saying, what are you doing? What are you seeing? What's happening, right? And mostly real estate guys. And 2 of our deals, one of our largest deals, came from one of those calls. And it was kind of the lesson of, and I told my broker buddies, the young ones, right, that used to, like, kind of came up in the business with me. I'm like, now is the time that you need to be really hustling. Yes. Like, the people that went to their parents' Colorado house and just mailed it in and worked from home, they are toast right now. The guys who were hammering, calling their friends, calling their clients and saying, what can I do for you? Do I need to restructure something? Do you need to downsize? Those people they thrived, right? They didn't make a bunch of money that year, because it was an odd year, but it was planting the seeds for later. That's right. And so one of the guys I called was Bill Cawley. I just called Bill and I said, Bill, what are you doing? Like, what's happening? And he said, well, I'm looking at this, I'm looking at that. And I said, let's work on something together. And so we chased a deal together. It fell through, and then a deal fell into my lap through a buddy of mine in the JLL office in Fort Worth. Ryan Matthews called me and said, hey, Sabre is thinking about selling their headquarters in Southlake and to do a sale leaseback. Their stock went from like 24 to 6, as you can imagine. They're in the travel business. And I called Bill and said, Bill, let's go figure this out, because I can't on my own. I didn't know how to buy an office building like that and underwrite it properly. I mean, I had an idea. And so Bill and I partnered and bought that together in 2020, December 23rd or something. It was like, whew, wow. It was like going to be X amount of legal down the drain, or we buy it. And so we bought that, and then we have a single family for rent business. We own about 630 homes, and that came through a random YPO COVID connection. If it weren't for COVID, we wouldn't have had either one of those deals.
So many entrepreneurs and business owners are listening to this. Jeff, what's the why behind, why'd you stay aggressive in COVID? What's some of the lessons that you would encourage other business owners to be focused on right now in their business?
The why was 3 kids and property taxes and just life. But I think just deep down, I have other investors in my company, and I didn't want to let them down. Yeah. And partners, right? It would be tough if you were just the sole partner. I don't know how. I mean, obviously people get motivated in all different ways, but for me, I didn't want to let my partners down, and that was the real goal.
What's on the horizon for Staubach Capital?
Let's hope rates come down. Yeah. It's we have now. We've got like 30 entities And I never dreamed that I would have that many deals. That's the Texas word. Everyone says deals. Here's a deal. It's funny when we used to say that around the New York guys and the other jail officers, they'd be like, "That's all you guys say is deals."
How do they describe them? What do they say?
Transactions or whatever. But like Texas, just deals.
It's deals.
I got
deal flow.
Yeah, deal flow, exactly. And the main reason is because you can't really exit today with where rates are. And so people always ask me, well, how's your business? I said we have stress, but not distress. We don't have to sell. And and everyone. I mean, if you're in the real estate business now, if you don't have stress, then you're way smarter than me. I mean, the biggest of big boys are throwing keys back and figuring things out and restructuring and kicking the can down the road. So we want to be active. Unfortunately, we're not a big boy, so I don't believe we'll have an opportunity to get just a, no-brainer opportunity. For example, if this building, became available at a fraction of, value, a big guy would come in and say, "I'll go hard tomorrow with $3 million and do it." We can't do that kind of stuff. And then the really distressed stuff that you can see out the window here, not far. Office is just tough. I'm an expert in office, and you can't underwrite it. I mean, you just can't.
With your experience, what's the future of office the next 3 to 7 years?
I think it's going to come back. There's already productivity's down. I mean, like everybody knows this. I mean, everyone in the business world, you can't work. You can't just do your day-to-day work from home every day, right? I mean, once a week. I mean, I get it. The flexibility, we allow flexibility, right? I mean, I can work from home for Friday afternoon or work from wherever. I mean, I get it. But the biggest thing is you can't grow in the business. And what we used to call it a JLL or Staubach. Staubach had a mentor protege program and an official program where you were paired with you applied to be on either side. And I did both. I got to do the protege and the mentor side. And I still talk to my mentor. I still talk to my mentor once a month, probably. Dan Evans, he's a close friend. But we talked about the informal mentoring. Right. And that's where you grow in the business, right? When Scott's sitting in his office one day and a young guy whose kid is applying to the school where your girls went to school, and he says, "Hey, I don't know what to do. We're picking Hockaday or maybe ESD. I don't know, can my wife talk to your wife?" That kind of stuff. Right. And that does not happen when you're working from home. The other thing that doesn't happen is the informal conversations, right? Like on a Zoom. I love Zoom. It has been very helpful. It's a tool. It's great. It's better than a phone call, and so we do it a lot more now than we did before, instead of just having a conference call. So people are paying attention and everything, but it doesn't replace the sit down. Like when we first sat down and you start talking about just this or that, or how's your wife doing? How's this happening? What's going on with your house? Did you get the, did you get the water leak fixed? You don't have any of that discussion. To me, the water cooler stuff is where so much value, or late in the day, right? Going to lunches, right? I mean, you're walking out of the office and you grab a young guy or a young woman and you say, "Hey, let's go talk about that deal together," or tell me, what are you struggling with? Right. And that just doesn't happen on phone calls.
And as your organization gets larger, the people that you touch on a day-to-day basis, it's a small group relative to the whole. And so the only way you're going to have interaction with the entire organization on a daily basis is to be in the office together and getting a cup of coffee, or, in the bathroom, or wherever you are. Those are the only places you're going to connect a lot of times if you're not in meetings with those members of the team.
And if you have to schedule everything, that it's just not, the magic doesn't happen typically in scheduled meetings. That impromptu, that casual.
You can't schedule it. I mean,
there's not enough hours in the day.
It's like most of us, our best friends are friends are the sports that our kids played on.
Right.
Because now I'm sitting on the sideline with the two of you all, and I'm casually getting to know you. Want to ask you one last question before we wrap up and land the plane. You got 100 CEOs, entrepreneurs, YPOers, What's your elevator pitch? What's your encouragement? What's your challenge? What's your question? What are you going to leave them with?
Man, that's a tough one. You know, I've been watching. I'm sure you guys have seen "This Too Will Pass." Have you seen that video with Tom Hanks? And there's a group of actors around, and it's talking about bad times, and it's, you know, this too will pass, right? But then he turns it into good times too, and says this too will pass. And so, as I've struggled, you know, dealing with looking at rates and having this and having to, you know, a capital call, I mean, the stuff you just don't want to do, that's been my mantra. Is like, okay, this too will pass. You know, we're gonna get through it. And even if there is some pain for us, if we have a deal that doesn't work out, it's not going to be the end of the world. We don't think that's going to happen. But that's the only thing I can say is that, you know, this too will pass.
Jeff, I think that's incredible wisdom. So thank you very much for joining us on Decision Points. Grateful for you and wish you the best success. Thank you for spending time on Decision Points. Have a great day.